Hi and welcome back to the Freedom Law Group Law Library. Let's begin with a truth so big, so disruptive, that once you understand it, you'll never look at the IRS, or the income tax system, the same way again. And if you haven't already, soon, you'll be safely and confidently walking off the federal income tax plantation. You'll be keeping all that money you've been giving the federal government, you will never have to file your taxes again, and you won't have to worry about looking over your shoulder to see if your IRS slave master is coming after you. This is the first video in our 10-part video series called Undeniable Evidence the Revocation of Election is a Legal Exit from Federal Income Tax. Let's dive in. In the first place, it's vital to understand a very important fact, and it's that there is no law that requires American nationals, those who have been born or naturalized in one of the 50 states, to file or pay a federal income tax. The law doesn't exist. It never has, and it never will. Americans have been asking this question for decades: CPAs, attorneys, researchers, freedom fighters. And in all that time, no one has ever produced a law that compels someone born in one of the 50 states to file a 1040 income tax return or pay a direct federal income tax. In the early 2000s, a group called the We the People Foundation for Constitutional Education ran full-page ads in national newspapers offering $50,000 to anyone, government officials, lawyers, IRS agents, who could produce the statute requiring average Americans to file and pay. They never gave anyone the money because no one could produce the law, not even IRS employees or tax attorneys. And then there's the documentary, America, Freedom to Fascism, by Aaron Russo, available for free on YouTube. Russo went on a nationwide quest to find the law. He even sat down with, and asked former IRS Commissioner Sheldon Cohen directly, on video, to produce it. And what did Cohen say? Nothing. He danced around the question, got defensive, and ultimately failed to produce the law, because he couldn't. There is no law. So ask yourself, if the IRS commissioner can't produce the law, what does that tell you? The law simply doesn't exist. Again, it never has. And it never will. And if there's no law that ever required you to file or pay in the first place, then that means you only became a taxpayer because you were tricked into volunteering, most likely by filing your first 1040. You didn't know it, but you elected to become a statutory taxpayer when you signed that form. And as a statutory taxpayer, now you are legally obligated to file and pay a federal income tax every year, whereas before that moment, you were not. In fact, had you never signed a 1040, you could have lived 100 years, earned $1 billion, and never heard from the IRS. Not once. Because before you elected to be a taxpayer, you were protected by Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4 of the Constitution and were a legal non-taxpayer. But when you signed your first 1040 form, you waived your constitutional protections and became subject to the revenue laws. So here's the million-dollar question. If you volunteered into the system, is there a way to lawfully and permanently get out? Yes. And that's what we'll show you in part 2 of this series. But for now, let me preview what's coming, because we're not asking you to believe this based on blind faith. We're trying our best to help you break free. I'm going to walk you through the 10 distinct categories of evidence that prove the revocation of election process is real, lawful, and your legal exit from the federal income tax system for the rest of your life. Here's what's coming in this series. Number 1. Statutory evidence. We'll show you the exact federal statute that provides the legal right to revoke the election to be treated as a taxpayer. This is your legal remedy that was codified into law by Congress. Number 2. Judicial evidence. We'll cite federal court rulings which clearly state there is such a thing as non-taxpayers, and that non-taxpayers are not subject to internal revenue laws. Most importantly, we'll be discussing who those legal non-taxpayers are, and how there's a 98% chance that you are one of them, or that you can be when you complete this series and the process we provide. Additionally, we'll show you the Supreme Court decision that ruled the federal income tax to be unconstitutional, and how that ruling has never been overturned, and is still the law of the land today. How the IRS is able to legally do what they do. Number 3. Semantic deceit and legal definitions. We'll break down the statutory definitions in the Internal Revenue Code and the obvious semantic deceit that had to be used to get Americans to volunteer into the federal income tax system. Number 4. Constitutional evidence. We'll explain why Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4 of the United States Constitution prohibits direct federal taxes unless apportioned among the states, and why that provision still applies to American nationals. We'll also deal with the 16th Amendment and how it only applies to the District of Columbia, not to the 50 states of the Republic. Number 5. Empirical evidence. Not one American national who has never filed a 1040 has ever been prosecuted for tax evasion. Not one. Ever. That fact alone is staggering and so revealing. Americans are legal non-taxpayers by birth or naturalization in the 50 states of the Republic, and only become subject to revenue laws when they elect to become a taxpayer by signing a 1040. Number 6. Historical precedent. Not a single individual who lawfully executed a revocation of election has ever been prosecuted for tax evasion for the tax years covered by the revocation. Number 7. Agency silence, also known as negative inference evidence. The IRS has published a 60-page document titled The Truth About Frivolous Tax Arguments. In all of those 60 pages, the revocation of election is never mentioned. That silence is deafening and telling. Number 8. Agency noncompliance evidence. We've submitted multiple Freedom of Information Act (FOIA) requests asking the IRS how many Americans have formally revoked their election to be treated as statutory taxpayers. Under federal law, the IRS is required to respond within 20 business days, yet in every case, they've failed to answer the question. This pattern of noncompliance speaks volumes. When a federal agency consistently ignores lawful requests for information, it creates what's known as agency noncompliance evidence, a form of administrative silence that strongly suggests the truth is too damaging to disclose. Number 9. Administrative behavior. The IRS has never returned, rejected, or rebutted a revocation of election affidavit. By refusing to deny, return, reject, or rebut the revocation of election, the IRS is admitting to its legal sufficiency, factual accuracy, and the declarant's non-taxpayer status. This is a legal maxim known as, "He who does not deny, admits." Number 10. Legal correspondence evidence. As a part of the revocation of election affidavit, it asks the IRS to provide the law in writing that requires American nationals to pay a federal income tax. They never have. They won't, because they can't. Additionally, we've sent multiple certified letters to the IRS's legal department asking them to issue a formal statement, from the IRS, that the revocation of election process as used by Freedom Law Group is not legitimate. They failed to do so, and again, they won't, because they can't. Number 11. Legislative silence. As part of our process, our clients send formal letters provided by us in the Client Resource Center to their 2 United States senators and their House representative asking for the law that requires them to file and pay. To date, not one lawmaker has ever produced it. And one more time, they won't, because they can't. It doesn't exist. So if you've been wondering whether the revocation of election is too good to be true, stick with us. This isn't theory. This is your legal remedy, grounded in statutory authority, court precedent, constitutional protection, and real-world data. And I'll walk you through the law in the next video. Welcome to the truth. Welcome to Freedom Law Group. And welcome to the beginning of your emancipation from federal income tax slavery, forever. Be sure to like this video and subscribe so you get notified when the next video in the series is available. I'll see you in the next video.